for you guys to fully understand this process, it's best we start at the top and make our way down. But before we keep heading up, I'm going to tell you guys about the church pews that you'll see around the mill. Now, there are 3 church pews throughout the mill, and they were actually brought in the late 60s and early 70s by teenagers that like to party in our abandoned mill. They brought the church pews 2.3 miles up the valley from an abandoned church, carried them up our waste rock pile on the side, and somehow wiggled them into an elevator shaft at the top. They got them all the way up that elevator shaft and into our organ at the top of the building, and then finally they wiggled them out of the organ and into the stamp room and placed them all around the mill where you'll see them today. Now, I don't know about you guys, but that seems like a lot of work just to have somewhere to sit. I think I would pick more. Now, before we keep moving on, the railing you guys see around the mill was added for your safety. It would not have been here when we were still in operation, and this being 1913, OSHA was not a thing, so the stairs up ahead are not quite up to code and they're a little steep. So we're going to take our time and use the handrail to make sure we get up and safe, but first I'll squeeze this.
We go all the way up for a bit. We go
somewhere else from here.
Yeah.
So we gotta go. The old people were out here. You're not.
I mean, you probably don't have to go if you don't really want to.
I wanted to. I thought they were going up and coming straight.
Now we go up there and then go outside and then come back in.
So as you guys make your way up to this next deck, over the railing into the best view in the middle, I highly suggest you stop by and get a look and get a picture of that view. And once you're done, we'll keep heading up these stairs. Now those steep stairs are pretty neat, so if you need a video, you can take one. Once you're done,
I can't breathe. Oh, I can't breathe. That's me too. That's on there.
Well, he said that if you wanted to go out, you can.
Oh, well, I mean, I'm okay. I want to be in here.
Okay.
I think it's we're just not used to it out.
Yeah, when we get upstairs, it's more open.
It's more open. Yeah. Are you going to tour or?
Oh, I'm in the just like training right now.
Oh, in training. I love that. Well, you're doing a good job of being very encouraging.
Yeah, he is. Anybody need a respirator? Right?
Welcome to the top of the mill. That gold Argo sign is on the other side of this wall, and in here we would have the timber, and at the max height of their stroke, the tops of these hammers were just 10 feet shy of the ceiling. Now, the two stamps were the main culprits responsible for everyone's hearing loss in the mill. Because of the stamps, on your first day on the job, your ears would bleed, and by your third day, you were completely and 100% deaf. The sound coming off of our stamps were actually heard 20 miles in any direction. So all the way up to Georgetown and all the way down to Goldmining, you could hear these hammers pounding into the mountain. Now, these were the only machines where safety came to play back in the day. There was actually a safety threshold in this room where you could not enter unless you had a buddy tie a rope around your waist and stand outside one of those doors. Because when you walked in here, the shock waves coming off of the hammers were basically like small explosions, and they could easily knock you out. So if you got knocked out, your buddy would drag you out with that rope, and then maybe you would wake back up so you could get back to work. Now, these machines ran 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and while they were on, they caused a constant blowback of the earthquake all throughout Idaho Springs. So we pretty much had a 30-year-long earthquake here. Now, the way our process doesn't actually start in here, it starts just outside the assayer's office. So if you guys have any questions for me, I'll answer them, but otherwise we're going to make our way towards the rail there, and let's go right out that way. So they would typically only come here. There was a small jam with our chutes. They would come in here real quick, undo that jam, and then run back out before they got knocked out. If they had been here for any longer than a few seconds, they would shut the stamps off and then yes, sir. This is part of our foundation. It goes 2 stories into bedrock and then 5 stories out to this point, and then it makes its way 100 feet down the mountain in a staircase shape. Alrighty, any other questions before we head on out? Yeah, at least they don't work anymore because everybody can be really hurt ears. Yes, I'm going to show you guys exactly how it works on our way back in the fall utility or dam. Alrighty, so we'll just head out that way.
I have to think this isn't the only one. How do you do it over the owl tree? I did it. Oh, it's so it's an antique owl.
They're hanging all over in here.
Fabergé egg. What's that Fabergé egg?
Station through and break the ore as it came out of the tunnel. So a cart would make its way out and stop by, and he would use a machine to grab a random sample of ore from that cart, and he would work through and grade that sample so he could use it to check the value of that cart of ore. Then he's going to pay the mine manager out accordingly. That way we bought up all the ore so we didn't have to worry about whose was whose and where it went, because all the mines connected to the tunnel were privately owned. Now, once that ore had been bought, that cart would make its way to the western stretch of the Argo there, and it would head to the metal tube called the rotary tipple. The rotary tipple would dump the metal into the cart into the elevator shaft there and get dumped into the back of the Argo. And from there, the ore begins its journey towards the stamps and through the mill. Now, do you guys have any questions for me before we head to our compressor room to pick up some hard hats? We tried to make makeshift houses. Just think about the stuff back into that Good question. All right. Any other questions? Any questions before we move on? All right. Now, as we're heading into that compressor room, I'm going to hand you guys a hard hat, and you'll make your way out the other door. Otherwise, it's going to get too cramped. And let's see here. You're an employee, so you can wear a black one if you want.
Okay.
Heck yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Got any questions for me real quick or anything?
No, I'm just trying to listen. And
So you'll notice that each of the guys has their way of working people through the mill and like different places they stop at, and that's just where they're comfortable and where they have space to do it.
sounds cool.
With smaller groups, I will I don't know if you'll ever see it, but I will stop in the compressor room and talk in here. But with big groups like this, I try to just pick the biggest spaces possible and learn that as you go.
Yeah, I understand.
I'm not trying to overwhelm you.
No,
Let me know if I am.
I know. I got you.
Alrighty.
Just trying to get some extra cool stuff on camera.
Oh, absolutely. So, in that room, we would have had two Ingersoll Rand air compressors. They would have supplied fresh air to the entire 200-mile-long mine tunnel system, and they would have supplied pressurized air to our pneumatic drills back in the tunnel. Now, here at the Argo, we are an EPA Superfund site, which means we had an environmental disaster happen and the government came in to help clean up. After our flood back in 1943, groundwater began to build behind a collapse in the tunnel, and as that groundwater built up, it leached the open heavy metal veins and acidic sulfur into it, making that water pretty toxic. Then, in 1982, all of that water came flooding into the creek, killing the fish and aquatic life. From there, the EPA came all throughout the mountains, setting up water treatment facilities and taking care of waste rock piles to make sure that that never happens again. Now, that gray building across the way is our water treatment facility. It was installed in the early 90s, and every week it removes a half ton of those heavy metals from the water coming out of our tunnel, and they dispose of them at a toxic waste disposal site. From there, the nice clean water gets pumped straight into the creek where it can go with the flow, and thanks to the water treatment facility, we've been able to reintroduce 13 species of trout back into the creek, and it's a fantastic fly fishing spot. Now, in 2015, they received some additional funds to upgrade that facility and clear out the stretch of tunnel we're about to head into. But before we do that, are there any questions? Alrighty, let's make our way in.
It's cold in here.
Wet.
So, welcome to our tunnel. It stays a nice comfy 50 degrees in here year-round. A great in the summer and cold in the winter. Now, making our way in, on your right, you're going to see a picture of when they first came in to clear the tunnel, and you'll see just how nasty it was back in 2015. Now, we'll be heading in this way. On either side of the tunnel, you're going to see the water line, where the water has been here all of the years between 1943 and 2018. And as we make our way towards the end of the tunnel, we're going to split into two lines. One line on either side of the tunnel, not the first one, our next group, and start the second one. So two lines, not across the outside of the tunnel. Now, if there are any kiddos who might have a hard time seeing, if they want to come to the front, they can stand right in front of me here. Otherwise, behind me here is our 5-foot thick pressurized concrete bulkhead, courtesy of the EPA. And behind that is a constant 4.5 feet of that acidic water. If any of you guys can open this door, the tour is free and you get a free water slide. Now, on the back side of the bulkhead, we have protective lining to prevent prevent erosion, but that water does end up eating at the threads of these stainless steel bolts. So every 6 to 9 months, the EPA comes in and replaces every third bolt along the face of the door, changing sets every time, of course, to make sure that there's always a healthy amount of strong bolts, keeping that door shut and creating a nice tight seal to keep the water at bay. Now, the pipe on the right side of the tunnel drains the water. On a typical day, it runs between 160 and 170 gallons per minute. But during peak snowmelt times in the spring, we can get up to 250 gallons per minute being drained from the tunnel. Now, as for that story behind the flood in our tunnel, at least the first one, back in January of 1943, after our miners had been drafted and sent to war or otherwise cleared out by a non-essential gold mining ban, the management of the Argo had about 5 or 6 caretakers remaining on the property to help with some side projects. And just before the war, the management had purchased the Kansas Burroughs group of mines. Now, the Kansas Burroughs would have been the first mine fully owned and operated by the Argo, but prior to purchase, the Burroughs had sat abandoned for 20 years. They had 3 main vertical shafts reaching depths of up to 1,200 feet, 2 main horizontal shafts, and 2 large man-made caves called stopes. Each of those stopes was large enough to park a Boeing 747 airplane in, and the entire mine was filled to the brim with around 1 billion gallons of water. So the management had their caretakers working on blasting back to around 40 feet shy of that flooded mine. Then, using a special drill with connecting drill bits, they were going to drill holes in that rock to let the water escape and slowly drain out of our tunnel. Now, because they were lacking a lot of manpower due to the war and the fact that dynamite was cheaper at the time, those caretakers decided to make things easier on themselves by blasting that 40 feet of rock down to 20. 20 feet would have been fairly sufficient to hold back the water pressure built up in that mine, but their maps must have been slightly off because when they went to blast back, instead of leaving 20, they left just 10 feet of rock and it crumbled instantly. All of a sudden, we had 1 billion gallons of water draining all at once, and sadly, it instantly killed the 4 miners caught back there during the blast. Now, we had a 5th miner making his way out of the tunnel, and he was right about where I'm standing when all of a sudden he goes flying 100 feet that way. The water had created an air pressure wave strong enough to come up here and shoot him towards the end. Now, he gets up and starts sprinting that last few feet to the door, and by the time he's out of the tunnel, the water has caught him and he's waist deep in it. Luckily, the water washes him around the corner to safety, and he gets up and turns around with just enough time to watch as 3 1,500-pound ore carts come shooting out of the tunnel past him at 400 miles an hour, and they fly all the way across the valley to where the front door of our safety is today. Now, as that water came through, it ripped out all of the support timbers and ventilation ducts, and even managed to peel up and rip out the Pittsburgh steel track attached to the floor. For about 7 hours after that initial blast, this tunnel was like a 12-foot wide fire hose blasting across the valley. It knocked out a secondary claims office that was right next to our tunnel, washed away over half our waste rock pile right out front, and anything down below that was east of the tunnel was washed away as well, leaving just our historic downtown district to the west. With that, it was the final nail in the coffin for the Argo and the Idaho Springs Gold Rush. With the tunnel destroyed as well as half the town, they decided to call it quits, and we were shut down and left abandoned for 30 years until the mid-70s, when we were repurchased and restoration began to preserve the Argo as a National Historic Landmark. Now, if you guys wanted a picture in front of the bulkhead here, it makes a fantastic backdrop, and you can even act like you're trying to yank the door open if you want. I'll be happy to help with those pictures, and then once we're done, we'll head back out. Now, if you don't want a picture, feel free to head out now, take your hard hat off, and return it in the construction room, and we'll be right behind you.
Or maybe not, you know. She wanted to take a picture of that. Oh, good. Well, yeah. Mine is
But when the water came through, it blasted all that sediment to the other side. Clear Creek used to run right through where Safeway is, but as that water shot the sediment to the other side of the creek, soon the creeks were right in front of the Argo or the area.
the original buildings?
I think it's like tore apart a bit, but yeah.
Alrighty. So once the ore had made it into our 150-ton ore bin above us, it would make its way down chutes with the help of gravity, and the ore would go under the hammers at the sides of this rock here. Now that motor behind you guys there is going to be turning the center shaft, and it will lift and drop the hammers onto the ore a lot like this. Now, once the ore was pressed down to the size of the gold pebbles up front, or the one in my hand here, we would feed water through to gather all that ore up, and it would make its way down a series of chutes into this center chute, and then into the secondary feed bin you guys saw back there. Now, as for what's powering all the motors around the mill, here at the Argo, we were fully AC electric powered. All of that electricity came straight to the fuse box, courtesy of the Gem hydroelectric plant just a quarter mile down the creek. And by 1903, 95% of Idaho Springs had power, and we had power up here 4 years before Denver. Now, do you guys have any questions for me before we keep following that ore down? Yes,
So
Penny.
when they purchase your oil and the guy gave you cash, and then it goes to the cost of power at the very end of the consumer, which would be a rush for those players.
So that's why we're buying that ore off folks, so we don't have to worry about that.
But the guy's gonna want to get his own war back, right?
No, each of the mines are privately owned, and the miners are working for daily wages paid out by those mine managers. Yep. All right. Any other questions before we head on down? Yes, sir. So over the 30 years we operated, we milled around $100 million worth of gold by 1943 standards, which translates to around $9.3 billion worth today. Oh, yes, ma'am. You make gold, so that's a good part. So, thousands of years, lots of heat and pressure, different chemicals and minerals mixed together, and so hard. It's just a bunch of science over a long time. Does that make a little bit more sense? Okay. So there's still 80% of the gold left in the mountains of the area, and we pulled out 20% of this area. Yes, they were finding gold, veins of gold all the time back there. However, those gold veins were probably being sent straight down to the Denver vein. That's what we consider high-grade ore. It's easily separated with crushing and heat, so they can just extract that at the mint. So the mines would either sell that to us and we sell it straight to the mint, or the mines would go straight to the mint.
So there's a picture in the museum of that, foot wide vein.
Yes. Yeah, depending on how big that vein is, we might be pulling out a lot of high-grade ore, and then around that edge of the vein, there could be some lower-grade chemically bound ore that we have to extract with the chemicals in the middle. But typically, veins are high-grade, almost pure gold ore, so that can be sent straight to the meat. Yeah, but this is, you gotta think about it though. These are 6-pound hammers. They were that loud. Think about how loud 1,000-pound hammers were. Pretty loud, huh? Alrighty, so we're gonna go ahead and make our way down. I'm gonna do this downstairs though, but hang on just a second.
are good.
I found that.
Really?
Yes.
No, really? What?
Oh. No, I didn't mean it like that. I think it was just like,
Oh, maybe I should walk with you.
Well, just don't let him smack your face again while
I don't know if it's very fast.
Oh, no, so I was thinking. But it's not.
I mean, really, actually, great.
What, anxiety on staircases?
No, no, I.
Yeah.
Ladies, just so you know, if you go a little sideways.
Yeah,
We see it sideways.
y'all.
We're gonna have to get food because we are,
Can't
no. Sierra.
Yeah, pizza. Pizza. Yeah, pizza. There's one in Empire, but I don't know if it's open yet.
Now when we're gathered back up, once the ore was crushed by the stamps, it would make its way into the big secondary beacon in there, and then over the classifier system behind you guys. The classifier used water and the density of the metals and minerals to classify the ore and give us a rough idea of what was coming out of it. Now from there, the ore would make its way into the Arrastra crusher at the end. The Arrastra was a Spanish invention, and its name means cracker in Spanish. So that would drag 4 heavy steel plates around the bottom of the bin to slowly grind the ore in sand. Now, in 1917, the ball mill would be installed right here, although it sold out to the flood. The ball mill can crush that ore down to sand at a lot faster than the Arrastra could, but we still kept that around as a mixer to mix in the soda ash and water and actually create our slurry. Once the slurry was created, it would make its way through the actual extraction processes around me, and the first one was our amalgamation tables. The mill workers I told you about earlier had another job, and that was to take a bucket of mercury and a paintbrush, and they would paint that mercury along these copper plates here. See, mercury is funny in the way that it's one of the few liquid metals, and it likes to stick to copper, silver, and gold. That, and it's decently toxic, but never mind that part. Now, that mercury is going to stick to these plates, and then they would feed the slurry over it, and as the slurry makes its way over, any gold, silver, or copper is going to be drawn to the mercury and stick to it, creating what we call an amalgam or a metallic mercury paste. That paste is then scraped off, and a little bit is put through a test retort, like this one. You know what I mean? And once it's in the retort, they're going to heat it over a nice hot fire to around 2,000 degrees. Now, as the mercury vaporizes off the other metals inside, that vapor is going to make its going to be gold on the bottom, silver in the middle, and copper on the top due to their molecular weights and densities. All of that is graded, and then the rest of the amalgam is sold to the Denver Mint for the same process on a much larger scale. Now, the Mint would also recycle 70% of that mercury, but they would sell it back to us for a profit because global warming wasn't quite the papers back then. And then we would reuse that mercury as well. Now, the machines below the amalgamation tables are our flotation cells, and those were actually inspired by miners' lives back in the day. Back before washing machines and tide, they had washboards and a mixture of water, pine tar, and lye. And as the miners' wives are washing their husbands' clothes, any gold flakes or dust stuck to the clothes is going to come off into that wash bin, and that dust will rise to the surface of the water with the agitation, where it's going to stick to the pine tar floating on top. From there, the miners' wives would steam that gold off the top and save it for themselves. And using the same idea, we fill our flotation cells with water, pine tar, and other chemicals, as well as that slurry, and we agitate that so the loose gold dust will rise to the top, stick to the tar, and we can spin it and send it to the mint. Now, throughout the mill, we had a total of 7 processes, 3 crushers, and 4 extractors, and that allowed us to reach a 95% gold retrieval rate. Most mills at the time were running 3 or 4 of our 7 processes, and they were hitting between a 40 and 60% gold retrieval rate. And mills nowadays have a hard time reaching and maintaining that 95%. So we were one of the most efficient and well-engineered mills of almost all time to get every bit of gold we could out of the ore coming out of our tunnel. Now, do you guys have any questions before we head down to the museum to look around for a bit?
So when you send things to the mint, that's like where they're minting gold?
Yes.
Okay.
They would turn that gold into gold bars, and most of them probably went to gold pounds. And you, I'm willing to bet we probably got some private jewelry manufacturers and stuff like that by our silver and gold as well. They only have 3 wheelbarrows. They probably have a lot more than that, but they don't have a street. Yeah, we don't know. Alrighty. So, are there any other questions before we keep heading on down? It's definitely dangerous stuff. I'm sure life expectancy is no. So, there were definitely no workers who were kind of cases of mercury poisoning, and there was always a low level of mercury vapor in the mill from the amalgamation process, and the mill workers would slowly feed that in and develop Mad Hatter's disease, which is basically early onset dementia. So these guys, typically, if they're not passing away from mercury poisoning, they're typically looking at 5 to 10 years past, where that dementia is setting too much and Alrighty, any other questions before we head on down? Alright, let's head down to the stage.
No, yeah, that's not.
So, our first couple models of pneumatic drills were called widowmakers, and that's because they just had the air and that was kicking up clouds of silica dust, and everybody was developing silicosis. Now, I do believe it was another drilling company that started using the technique of drilling holes through the edges. So here, and that had an inlet for air and then the water shoot water out to catch that dust.
Thank you. Absolutely. We certainly did. Thank you.
The shafts were actually going to be all above. Yeah, our top set of blocks. So those lines existed for a long time, and once the lines got that water, and these guys so we can drain all that water inside. The elevation of our tunnel, I believe, is about 7,500 feet. Careful, don't bonk your head or anything.
Tell them how many concussions you have.
So those are just different types of rocks and minerals you can find all over the place.
Like this, right here. Something that was at the house that was
Max.
Alrighty, so if everybody's feeling like they've had a good look around our museum, maybe we can head out to do some gold mining. I think most of our group is starting to make their way out anyway, so we're going to gather back up and head on out. Wow. That hurts. That hurts. You did. Completely rejected. Wow. You guys almost bye-bye. There you go.
Our cost to the field trip here.
Bye-bye. Oh, really? That's awesome. Jeez, you're strong. That hurt. All right, you guys, feel free to take up all the space we got.
Alrighty, so we're gonna head towards these donkey statues in the yard here.
Sits nice and safe while we get into the sand on top. After 5 seconds of doing that earthquake shape, to get rid of your sand, you're going to tilt your hand forward, keep the weight just under the water, and then we push and hold to let the water come in like waves on a beach with that top layer. After 3 or 4 waves on our beach, we're going to scoop up some water, re-secure that bowl, and it's rinsing it until we get down to this small size. Now, we're going to get going a little faster so we can get you all started. But you guys can go ahead and squash. Now, as you get further down, you're going to want to twitch your hand more and more so you
these bolsters is to work out all of the ground sand, so we're left with just a small pile of black. You guys are gonna get some black sand showing and then re-secure, sending that remaining ground sand to the top so you can keep working it out. Now here in a second, you guys might start to see my gold peeking out there with cruising my hand. You'll notice that the gold doesn't move too much, but the sand around it does. And even if that gold does scoot forward, the ridges catch it, and that's why we work over the ridges. Now, once you guys are down to a quarter-size pile, you're ready to find the gold. I went all the way down to show you what's going on. You guys don't have to get this far. Now, to find your gold, you'll need just a little bit of water in your pan. You'll put that pan flat, and then you're going to slowly stir that sediment off the top to get that gold shine. Now, once our gold is showing, we're going to slowly dump out that water that's left in our pan because it gets in our way. And then we can let that pan float on the water. Now, when you guys get your pans, everybody's going to have a baggie buried in the bottom. Dig that out first thing and pop it in your pocket, because if you leave it in there, panning's going to be a little difficult. Now, once your gold is showing, pull that baggie back out, open it up, fill it about halfway in water. Then, with a nice dry finger, wipe it off by mom, dad, brother, sister, doesn't matter, make sure it's dry, and we're going to touch it to a good piece for 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3, and that gold sticks to the oil on our skin. Then we dip that finger in the water, and that gold sticks straight to the bottom. Voila! Now we got a nice shiny gold piece. Now the first piece is free, the rest of it's you. First piece is free, rest of it's you. Alrighty, so unless you guys have any questions, I'm going to pass out the pins and let you get to it.